If I had to start photography all over again, here's what I'll do. I would simply start taking photos around the national park, which is where I'm from, and I'll start taking photos with either my camera or either on my phone. But since we're going to go for starting all over again, I'm going to be taking photos with my phone, and I would simply try to actually maximize my settings as much as possible and actually try to read about the settings of the phone, about the photography side of things, as right now with phones, they've got like a photography setting. You can actually adjust a lot more with your settings, with exposure, aperture, and a whole lot of things right now, which is actually quite cool to see with Apple and Sony and Samsung, as you will. So, but I'll start to take photos around there, and I'll simply try to learn about composition. I feel like is probably the best thing to do and probably to learn about, but also about camera settings, which we'll get into a bit more, and actually start reading about what camera settings do and how they affect my photos, as I think those three things about camera settings such as ISO, aperture, and shutter speed is probably the best thing to really learn about. So I'll start reading about those and actually just start reading about what they can do to my photos and what type of photography and genre that I can do. Before I get into those, I feel like a photo contest would challenge me. So if I'm gonna do any other challenge, I feel like a photo contest would challenge me a bit more how to take photos, and also try to learn more about photography and get more photo ideas from either people and also for myself as well, to learn about and go, okay, I can apply that into my own photo and actually apply that towards my own photography as well. But the biggest thing I feel like for most photographers is that they don't write down what they are good at and what they're bad at. Like just two things you just write down in your journal. Write down what it is that you're good at and what it is that you're bad at is probably the best thing to do, because that way you've actually got evidence that you need to improve somewhere, and you can actually improve on that aspect of that area. For example, for me, let's go with I need to improve on aperture, but I'm actually really good with shutter speed. So how can I apply learning about aperture and learning about how lighting works and stuff, because that's probably the biggest thing with aperture, right? Like just lighting in general, because right now we're on f4 at the moment with my own lighting, and then with shutter speed we're at 1/100, and so with 1/100 it has just a bit more light in, and whereas aperture it gives the camera a bit more light in to bring in. So that's the biggest thing with aperture, it brings the light into the camera, so that way I don't have to use a lot of ISO, and also like lower my shutter speed is probably the biggest thing. And then I would also start learning about photo editing, because the biggest thing for me was photo editing, and so the biggest thing with photo editing is actually trying to get used to the adjustments and try not to play with it as much as you can. So I'll start developing a lot of overwhelm in terms of those. So I'll start to actually learn about what it is about Lightroom that's so good about it, and what it is about these basic adjustments that I can do, rather than just posting photos on RAW or either on JPEG, depending on what you want to take photos with. And so I'd actually start to try to consume content around these, around Lightroom, and see what I can actually do with my own photos, and also Photoshop as well, which is one thing I still struggle with to this day, is kind of just Photoshop, as I only just process my photos onto Lightroom unless I want to get a bit more creative with my photos, then I'll go for it. But simply I'll just try to just go through Lightroom and do those basic adjustments, do a bit of masking, and then do a bit of cropping, and then that's how I would process my photos. But back to the photo contest bit, I feel like with most photographers, photo contests is a good thing to start with, especially with people, and just trying to communicate with a lot more others. As if I was going to start over again, I feel like I need to talk to a lot more photographers. I need to talk to a lot more people who are like me, and try to get a connection out of that too, and try to just learn from them and learn what their style is and what their genre is, and what's so special about their photos, and seeing what actually captures their eye, and seeing what captures their photography, see what photography means to them. Because if photography doesn't really mean much to you, then it's just a hobby. Whereas for me, it means a lot to me, because I feel like it is a great thing. I feel like it's a good thing to capture moments and freeze in time that you'll never get back, because that's the biggest thing. And being able to print those moments is the biggest thing. Be able to print those moments, and then that way you can actually, look back on people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a wedding, like a one day, and then they can, and if there's no photographer, then there's nothing to look back on. But now with photography, they have that problem. They have that problem like just solved, and they have those photos to look back on and go, that's a special day that I'll remember forever, like that wedding, that big day. And so if I was starting photography all over again, I would simply try to start to solve a bit more problems as I get better and better, and just try to, you know, learn about photography, the basics, and just trying to learn about the essentials that I actually need and the gear that I need, and not what I want, obviously, but what I actually need to be able to start over, and, you know, being able to, you know, learn about that, if you will. And also, a biggest thing is actually, as a photographer, it's a bit of like an isolating thing for like an isolating like hobby, because you're just taking photos by yourself, or either you're taking photos with the group. But for me, it's pretty rare. And so if you're taking photos alone, always talk to other photographers and get ideas around that, so you can actually, you know, connect with others. As I think if I had to start all over again, as I said, I'd like to just create a community and create like a little group chat, and just try to connect with a bit more others. Like, that's probably the biggest thing that I'm going to try and do for this year, is try to connect with a bit more others and try and get my content to more people that are like-minded like me, because then I'll be a lot more fulfilled. So then that way I can then just have that connection, and being able to, you know, talk to you guys through comments, seeing what your story is, seeing who you are and stuff. And so if I start photography all over again, that's probably the one, like, if there was a list, that's the one thing I want to be able to do, is connect with you guys and be able to connect that thing and just go, oh, I like that. Like, connection is the biggest thing. Because doing stuff alone as a photographer, it can be frustrating and also quite lonely as well. So I feel like for most photographers, they probably feel that from me especially. And so with all that information indulged and consumed and stuff, it can be very overwhelming, especially for me. I'm a person who gets not overwhelmed quite easy, but overwhelmed if something doesn't really go right, or something about that photo, or just I need to retake it, but then there's no second chance. That's the biggest thing with photography. There's no second chance to grab that photo unless that object is staying still. That's the biggest thing. And so yeah, because if I start, because with my current timeline at the moment, not this other me that's currently out there somewhere that's, you know, watching this video, all of this information took me 3 years to learn. 3 years to learn, and I'm indulging into a video within 8 minutes. So that's what I would do if I had to start photography all over again. If you are struggling with photography as well, I have a beginner guide and also a camera setting cheat sheet as well, which is also free. And yeah, but the beginner photography guide is not free, I'm sorry. But yeah, that'd be about all. And yeah, like and subscribe for more.